Now let's go to start our vibe coding experiment with a good preparation in the beginning. What we're going to do is that we use the Claude Desktop app, and we use it because we have the MCP server here with the file system. Means that the desktop app is going to prepare for us the prompt that we need, the system prompt that we need, the documentation that we need for the project, for the MVP project, right? So first of all, we need to have the clear idea. We need to give the clear idea of the cloud so he can prepare for us everything. We give them the acceptance criteria of the application that we want to build. We explain that we want to build application similar than Slack, but for AI agents, that you can create the army of AI agents and you can communicate with this army. We explain what technologies you want to use. We explain, for example, in a case of AI SDK, it's a new technology for cloud. So we say, okay, I pass you the link. We have the MCP server for fetch the information from the link. So he have to gather the information that is going to be important in order to complete this project. And then we give very clear instruction how we want the structure of the documentation and the context. Means that how we want the folders with the documentation inside, the folders with the prompts for the system prompts, for the prompts for the plan and everything. Now, very soon you're going to see the power of very good structure context for the LLMs. Like this, we can see which LLM and system can, follow the instruction and which workflow is best. What we have here created by Cloud is the documentation folder, which inside I have the AI SDK documentation. Then we have a documentation for the Nuxt, because we're going to use a Nuxt in front and the back in our case, okay? And then we have a documentation as well for the UI library. In this case is a Nuxt UI library. And as well here it's explaining the style of the front, like the components we want in atomic architecture. It's explaining the style of the code and the style of the front end that we want in this case. Now under project expectation, we have a system prompt, and the system prompt explains the LLM how to use the folder structures that we have for the context. Means that, where is the files for the documentations and where is the files for the system prompt. Means that, to know how to navigate for this, where is the plan and where is, the important parts and how he can find everything and how we can go to work with the rest of the files. Another important files for the context are the changelog and the plan tasks. The changelog, we use it and we give an instruction of the LLMs that when he is finished with some, set of work or debugging or whatever, he have to put there in words what he makes so far, okay? Why we do this? Because next time when you start coding with a different LLM or different workflow, that's probably the first file that we want to give like a context. And then the plan tasks. It's like to-do list for the LLM because we don't want that the LLM is losing attention. What we make with this is that you make the task and then you put there like it's done. And like that's the way that the LLM is follow the progress, is knowing what's the next step, what we make so far, and he know that, okay, that's done or we have to do it in the future. So let's start with the non-agentic version of our experiment with using Aider. First of all, we have to put the end file where we put the Google API key. In case that you don't want to use the configuration file to put this, we can expose the API key in the folder that we're going to use. Before that we start, we're going to create the Aider configuration file where we're going to put the important stuff for this experiment. In this case, we're going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro for the smart model, and then for the fast model we're going to use GPT 4.1 mini, okay? Then in this case we're going to say, for example, we use alias, and then with the alias we just put the models that we're going to use. Then we say as well that we want the dark mode, then as well we say that we don't want to initialize the Git repository, and then we don't want the auto commit here, okay? So once when we're done, let's go and see that the configuration is working, and when we confirm that everything is correct, we can jump to the next step. which is going to be to add the context in header in order that we start to work with this context. Let's warm up our LLM with the first prompt. The first prompt is going to explain how to use the documentation and from where we want to start. In this case, it's a phase 1. Then, as you can see, that the model is going to ask us that we have, the main files to start the project, and we say that we don't, and just start the process from the beginning. As you can see that he is creating for us the structure and is checking the task that he have as well in the same moment. Then the files, then it's asking the do we want to install everything? Here's my mistake that I install also the my C shell, the update of my C shell. But anyway, after that, he start to install the dependency, and from here it's going to be a little bit like I'm just copying the error, pass the error, and he try to fix this error. So nothing special for the moment until that we get the first view. And in this case, the first view is going to be the index or the dashboard, let's say. So as you can see here, we still have some error. We just copy and paste the error. We're not applying any, we're not checking for the errors. He is just doing everything because the experiments is there how we can do only with the LLM, only with the vibe coding. So yeah, and that we have the first view here. Okay, so from here we can give an instruction that if we are happy that we have this view, and he considered that we have a part of the first phase 1. So after the we ask, he is going to explain that, well, the error is normal because, we have components that we have to create in the phase 2, and then we want me to continue with the linter and the formatting. And we say, yes, please, because that's the steps that we have to continue, or the steps that we have to complete in our task list. So we just say that he can continue with the linter and the formatting. And now when he is finished with the linter, we do as well the test that everything is working correctly. Then we have some errors that he is going to fix for us. And after that, when we're ready, we're going to say that we want to continue with the phase 2, okay? Since the LLM now is finishing with the phase 2, let me put a side note. We're using a Gemini 2.5 Pro, but the experiment model, which is the free version, okay? And it's not the preview version, which is the paid version. But I cannot figure it out to work the preview version in this case. So what I tell you this, because you have to know that we're going to hit the rate limit very, very soon. And once when we hit the rate limit, probably we have to wait a little bit. So we hit the rate limit and our experiment is going to end there for this workflow. For the moment, everything looks fine. Obviously, now we're going to introduce some errors because we continue with the phase 3, okay? As you can see that the structure of the folders, it's looks fine for the moment. And we get the instruction to continue with the phase 3. We asking that we have something more to include in the phase 3, because I see obviously stuff that we not make so far and it's not checked like that. He is going to, continue with some things that he considered that we not make so far. Then obviously we get the errors, and from here just we do debugging. Means that we copy the error and we just pass, and we tried that, the Gemini 2.5 with the help of GPT 4.1 mini are fixing these errors. And nearly in the end of the phase 3, we arrive to the end of our rate limit, so we cannot continue for the moment. We have to continue later. But anyway, for the moment, we leave this part of the experiment and we jump to the next one. Now for the next test, we're going to do the same, but this time we're going to do with the GPT 4.1, GPT 4.1 and GPT 4.1 mini. As you can see, we have a $3 here in our credit. We use a strong model GPT 4.1 and 0.1 mini. Again, we start either and then we put the context and then we put a prompt with the instruction of how to use the context. This time we try to be a little bit more explicit in the instruction. Then we remove from the list from the before of some checks that we don't need it. And let's go to see what he is going to produce for us. Now we have a promising start from here. He started the Nuxt installation script, right? Now we have to continue and we have to put the stuff that we want, like packages and the structure of the folders and everything. Once when it's done, we're going to ask that it's continue with the phase 1, right? It's look that he don't know how to follow the instructions, so we have to say 2 times that we want this continue with phase 1. So once when that's done and we see that it's not follow the instruction, we just stop here. Why? Because we spend 20 cents for the moment and we don't do any progress. So let's go to continue with the next step and see how we can do in more intelligent way. And now we get to the agentic length. We're going to use the Cline in our Visual Studio Code, and we're going to use the Open Router. From there we use a Sonnet 3.7 and then we use a Gemini this time preview with more rate limit. Gemini 2.5, sorry. We're going to use, like I said, the Cloud Sonnet 3.7 for the architect mode, and then we're going to use for the coding, for the Act model, we're going to use the Gemini model. As you can see, what's the credit we have when we start the project, and after that we're going to compare what's the credit when we finish the project. And now let's go to see what he is going to produce for us. Now, just to be clear, this workflow is completely different than the workflow that we used before. Why? Because the client is coming with a system prompt in the backend, which is quite, complex and with different steps. Then it's coming with the architect mode, which is amazing. The architect mode is the strong model. Most of the time, it's better idea if you use a reasoning model, and then it's coming with the Act model that you can, you can use some cheap model there for coding, and that's amazing. That's amazing, and as well can use tools. Exactly for this, I say in the beginning that we go in the agentic length, and it's powerful, it's quick, and the debugging part as well is better here because you don't need to do like a copy and paste most of the time because he can, read the output of the commands in the terminal. By the way, if you feel more brave than me, you always can put the auto approve, but in my case I always leave it and I am approving the changes because sometimes like any LLM workflow want to change some files that are not in the scope, so I prefer to have to have the control there. And now for the moment we see that it's doing very good job, but obviously we use a Sonnet 3.7, which is very powerful for coding, quite expensive as well, but we see in the end of this experiment how this it's going and how much it's going to cost for us. Now let's look that it's finished with the first part. So we're going to see how it's looked the home page, which in create of Cline is that he has followed the instruction. First of all, there is follow the instruction and every time is make the checks like done, okay? But second, I know this because he installed the Nuxt UI library, which I think that with the Aider workflow we don't get until there, okay? And that's good, and that's mean that he has followed the instruction. But now very soon we going to start to receive the errors, and the errors coming from the API. In our case, we use the Open Router. Okay, so these errors means that we are out of credit. Okay, so we get into the second phase. We not start second phase, I think, and we spend $5. So yeah, you see, there's not the cheapest way. And finally, we get to my favorite way for pair program with LLMs, and that's a Cloud Desktop app. Why is my favorite? Well, because with the correct MCPs connected, and then with the correct system prompts in the project, like in this case, I'm in a project who I'm calling a lead developer Sam, where I have my system prompt, and the system prompts is just specific for my use case and just specific for the styles that I like for coding and everything. And that's amazing. And as well as my favorite one, because like this I can experiment more with LLMs with less money. What I mean by that, I'm paying 20 few dollars a month and I can use it. Obviously, in one set of work, you have a limit, but every time the limit is getting quite bigger. What mean the limit? Well, now you're going to see that probably nearly in the end of the project is going to say, now stop for here. You have to wait a little bit. A little bit could be a few hours, and then we continue. It's very similar than working with a colleague, working with another developer. Okay, so he need to rest as well. And if you don't want this limit, you can always pay for the max, but the max, I think that it's $100 per month. But anyway, you can get quite far only with the $20 per month, okay? So what we do here, first of all, like we say, we have the MCP servers, and one of the more important MCP server that we have is the file system. Then, with the file system, we talk cloud. Now, that's the project that we work. Have a look inside. Have a look the directory that obviously we create in the beginning with the same tool. Have a look the directory. Have a look the files important with the plan, then the planning task, and then the change log. Make some idea of what we want to do and let's start working. Okay, and he is very very good to follow the instructions. Okay, obviously in this case I put the thinking part. The thinking part is a few seconds in the beginning of the message there is thinking. Okay, and that's make him a little bit more powerful. Okay, but if you don't put it, it's no problem, because just the base model, the Claude 3.7, it's very powerful for coding. For me, for now, it's the best one. I know that the Gemini 2.5 Pro, it's amazing as well. And if we compare the prices, when we talk about using via API, well, it's the best one, because a value price is the best one for me. But then the cloud, it's powerful, it's intelligent, and it's understanding what you exactly want to do. And when the time there is not understanding exactly, it's very easy to put him in the right direction. The only thing that I'm missing here in this workflow is the terminal use MCP. And in my case, in the past, I make a package that I can use locally, like a MCP locally, but then was not working so good. And then the packages that I found online, it's very complicated for me to trust of these providers. Why? Because, well, it's messed up with your terminal, and it's not a joke. Using MCP for file system is a little bit different, and as well as coming from the official package managers and official servers coming from Anthropic. Okay, so yep, it's a little bit more easy to trust of these packages. But then again, and that's just a point of view, or my point of view, is that don't trust any MCP that you found online, because they can mess up your system. But apart of this limitation, I'm more happy with this workflow than the other ones, because I don't know why. It's something magical here. Obviously, it's not a magic, but when he have a context of the files and is constantly, looking these files and getting the context, everything is work better, and it's a few less errors than in another workflows. I don't know why. It's just when he is creating, for example, the Nux project. In once, he create absolutely everything without any error, and this for me is quite important, because the heavy lifting and the heavy part of the project is done, and he has made this without any error. Then he is very capable to follow the plan, and he is very capable to know when have to check like the task is done and when have to put in the change log after that he is making some job. So after a while working together, we get to this UI, okay? And it's looking quite good actually. Now, for the moment, it's just UI. He still not connect the backend, and I think that it's not connect the backend because we still have in our plan that the backend is coming in, future phases. But for the moment, it's good. Again, it's not error free. Obviously, it's not error free, but when we detect the error and then pass the error of Claude Desktop up, it's immediately fixed, and that's good for us. That's good because we don't need to do so much stuff. And as you can see, sometimes it's making rookie mistakes, like removing all the packages from package.json. But hey, even the more powerful LLM for coding today, which is for me as a Cloud 3.7, is making this mistake. So that means that you cannot leave the LLM to make everything by himself, and you have to be there to supervise what he is doing and how he is making this. And in the end as well, you have to supervise the code that is providing. Now, the experiment here is that we try to see what's the maximum that we can do with the less supervising. Means that, as you can see in this experiment, we're not looking the code and we're not looking the files. We only looking the errors, and we only looking the output, like a visual output, and working with a front with the backend. Okay, but in the real life scenario, obviously you have to be there to check all this stuff and make sure that everything is working correctly. Probably good way to do this is with TDD, a test-driven development. Like this, you can do a small task, and the LLM is going to make the test, the task, pass, and then go from the next one. And that's another way that we're going to explore for the future. But for the moment, you see that you have to be there. Now we get into the complicated part. What I try to do is that I try to make the backend work, and the front end is, calling our backend and not making, not having a placeholders like it's having now. It's look like it's a little bit complicated all this process for cloud, but hey, I think that we get there. We get there with the patient, and as you can see that we have one more message left. But once when we use this message, well, you come later and you start programming from where you left. So after the coffee break with your pair programming buddy, we start to work again. Now, good idea is to not stop working from the same chat that you was before and start a new chat. Why? Because imagine that you start working with the same one. Now every time when you send some prompt, it's going to send, making some calls with all the chat history, all the context that you have, plus the new prompt that you put. So imagine that you're going to burn the limit that you have immediately. So what we do is that we start a new chat, and exactly for this we make the changelog file, and exactly for this we make the plan task file. Why? Because first of all, Claude again is going to review all the files, then it's going to have a look what's happening in the changelog, then the plan task file, and he can start working like a brand new day, like a brand new project without problem, because he know what we was doing actually. Okay, and now with these small things and with small tweaks, we're going to be done. Now what we have in the end is that we have this beautiful UI. We connected with the AI SDK, and in this case we're connecting with the ChatGPT, the new 401 mini, because it's quite good for the test and we don't need to spend so much money for the test, and it's working. Now you cannot create the agent because we have to work more for this, but the end plan was just to make the MVP that we can show someone our prototype, and you can see that we can make this in one set. In this case was a one set working with Claude 3.7, then we rest, and then we finish the job. Okay, so guys, I hope so that you enjoyed this video. For me it was very interesting and very fun, because like this I can experiment and I try until where we get with LLMs nowadays. And let me tell you, and probably you know by now, that we get quite far and quite quick. Okay, so I'm so excited for the future, but I hope so that you enjoyed it as well with me, and I hope so that if you like this kind of video, let me know down in the comments, so we continue doing this kind of crazy stuff.